Good day, fellow tech connectors and friends. We're back on season 2 of the Tech Connect podcast series. I know you loved season 1. We're back at season 2. And this year, there's a lot of buzz around artificial intelligence. And so we're drilling into it, and we're starting with education technology. And we have with us today one of our members, Kwame Nyatuame, who's also very passionate about EdTech and is actually the president of the Ghana Edtech Alliance. Awesome. I mean, such a privilege to tap into those resources. Kwame, how you doing?
Fantastic, Papa. Happy to be here.
Wow. And what are your thoughts or feelings around artificial intelligence and the work that Texonnect is trying to do?
Well, first, let me start with the Texonnect. I think Texonnect is doing an amazing job. The whole idea of putting professionals together, people knowledgeable of different spaces together to, in a sense, condense that and then take action for impact. I think it's very, very, very impressive. Let me just say, off work days. I mean, you inspire me a lot, and I think you're saying for a lot of members in Tech Connect to do more. I like that you push. I like that you are very active in the space. You're very hands-on, and I think that for the sort of transformation that we want to see in our country and our continent, those are the sort of attributes we need to see and exhibit. And so, yes, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Speaking about AI is exciting. Yeah, it's very, very exciting. The whole idea that the machine can think and um, generate ideas and is very, assistive in a lot of the mundane tasks in our everyday lives is very exciting. Yes, and I'm really excited about what it can do for especially the education space.
So, talking about the education space, how is artificial intelligence transforming the space?
Oof. Let me give a background.
Okay.
So typically when I have these sort of conversations, I like to contextualize it.
And as you do, please let our listeners who may not be familiar with the EdTech space understand
Right.
what it is.
Okay. So let me start with that. So education technology is what we shorten as EdTech. Some people say EduTech, some people call it whatever, but I really decided to call it EdTech. Very shortened form for education technology. And that's basically education, both hardware and software, that improves teaching and learning, improves learning outcomes, and number three, improves education administration and delivery. So basically, employing technology to improve all of the aspects of education, to improve, the outcomes, and especially what we want to see when it comes to our human resource. That's basically it in a nutshell. And in our space, it's I would say that if in terms of that conversation leading up to people actually building things, leading up to people paying attention and then wanting to use those things, it's been very gradual. I've had conversations with a lot of founders in the space and some key ecosystem players in the education space who say that the whole COVID situation was a blessing because, in a sense, it literally lit that fire up.
People didn't have a choice.
Quote unquote, to
Students, young children, everything, and parents who were anti or call themselves BBC had to adjust because the kids had to learn.
Exactly. And nobody thought schools would close down. Nobody said that. So that really shook, us to the core and realized that, we slept on technology in education. And so that has, in a sense, quickened the pace at which we adopt and integrate technology in our classroom. Is moving as fast as I would like, not necessarily.
And what are the factors? What do you think is preventing it from moving as quickly as it should?
I would say, I think one of them is mindset. The whole conversation around change and how it's difficult for us to change from the way we do things. And so I would say that majority of us in Ghana and on the continent are stuck to the old ways of executing on education. And so you even have instances where we have teachers who are not interested in having the conversation around technology. There's this whole negative perception around it.
And that's why people like Dr. Nefi and Co are working hard to bring about the 21st century teaching and a more interactive way of.
Yes. I mean, shouts to Dr. Nefi. I've had a conversation with her as well, and she's brilliant at what she does. And I think more such people in the space to push that conversation. And the context I wanted, or that picture I wanted to paint is when you just step out of the house. Do we have do we have an organized society? Say no. Look at our markets. Look at the way we organize our society. Look at the way trotros move about. Look at the whole conversation around the rising unemployment. All of these is pointing to something that is happening in the country. So once that picture is painted, once we understand that, the question is, now that we are having these very exciting technologies, including AI, what can we do to ensure that in 10, 20, 50 years, we are able to, in a sense, envision a certain type of human resource, right? What can we do? And this for me is what I'm excited about when it comes to especially AI. It's in a sense, and all of the other emerging technologies. It in a sense forces us to say, okay, what can we do to get, so if we put it in a classroom setting, for example, if I am going to teach my child in maybe class 5 or class 6 algebra, right? How can I leverage on technology to maybe shorten that process to maybe a week or maybe a day, but ensuring that quality is not missed, right? Technology has forced us to be able to imagine that. They have forced us to reimagine what education can look like. And so I especially like the disruptive part about these new technologies because it's going to force us to think. And for me, we do not have a choice in terms of, the sort of Ghana that we want to see. And at the core of that is an educated human resource that is capable and competent and bold enough to be in that position where you can be better stewards for the resources that you have for the benefit of clients and people on the continent and in the world. Yeah.
So, Kwame, specifically, what would you say AI's role is?
I'd say that AI and what it offers affords us the opportunity to be able to, number one, reimagine what education looks like. And number two, it gives us the opportunity to speed up the process of making that a reality, putting us in a position where we can see the results very quickly. So in terms of its role, I can position AI, all things being equal, I need to add that, as that catalyst that can make the way we want to reimagine, education and that sort of competent and capable human resource a reality very quickly.
And I get the sense from what you're saying that also it allows you to track
Yes.
if you're doing a good job. It
Yes.
informs that M&E partner and
Yes.
ensures and gives you the metrics to
Absolutely.
see how well you're doing.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, based on that, how does AI enable adaptive learning platforms that tailor lessons to individual students? Because we need to be able to, I know one of the things about 21st century learning is the ability to adapt to the students to ensure that you give them what they're looking for.
I think that's one part that really excites me a lot. The fact that we're able to build adaptive platform tools that, in a sense, I look at it as, um, if you like, that shepherd, if you like, holding your hand 24/7. Anytime you need it, it's able to provide you information, insights, and all of the other aspects that you need with regards to learning and the specific outcomes that you require from learning. There are tools, there are some exciting tools like very popular one, Squirrel AI. I think that is from China. That literally just in a sense gauges the level that you are at in terms of maybe the topic or the course that you're doing, and then it's able to structure questions, structure the learning journey at the stage that you are at. I liken it to a lot of the games that we were playing through our childhood, including FIFA and
Arcade
all
games. Mhm.
of those, right? Where it says beginner, intermediate, and then expert. So now AI is able to, in a sense, create that scenario for each of the individual students in the classroom. And so the teacher is just in a position where he just has to be observant enough to track and know where each student is at in terms of the understanding of the topic and so on and so forth, and know when to, in a sense, apply more pressure, offer more guidance, and all of that. So in terms of these adaptive tools, they're really exciting. I think bringing it to the Ghana Edtech space, there are a few Edtech startups and companies that are getting into that space. That's exciting. One of which is eCampus. There's eCampus. There's QNO. And there's Meta School AI as well. It's exciting to see indigenous companies finding solutions and creating sort of adaptive tools that help students in their learning journey. Another bit that is exciting about these adaptive AI tools is its ability to be able to assist teachers, right, in coming up with questions, one, two, in summarizing long, complex aspects of topics or courses that you're delivering during a term or a school year, in in rather creative ways to ensure that students are engaged, students are, in a sense, connected to what they're doing, and there's also the bit where just because the student is able to uh, just because the student is able to identify the stage that they are at in the learning journey, the AI is able to, in a sense, meet them where they are and help with, um, in a sense, the delivering of the topic at the level that they are at and ask questions at the level that they are at. And then, in a sense, hold their hand all through that journey till they get to the place or the phase where you show a certain level of competence and grasp of the topic.
It's interesting you say these tools are supplementary or supporting the teachers because there are those who believe that these tools will actually replace the teachers. What are your thoughts on that?
I laugh when you say that, and it's very typical, right? All of the technologies that have popped up in the past, they always caused fear and panic. People said the same thing about the internet, right?
Okay.
They said the internet was going to wipe out a whole lot of jobs. Well, it did, but then it also created a whole lot of opportunity. And so, specifically with AI and what it's going to do, especially for teachers, it is going to change the way they go about teaching. So now it's not going to be the typical blackboard or whiteboard, and you are just sharing information and people are writing, taking notes and whatnot. Teachers, the role of teachers is going to move to this mentor type, facilitator type role, where and that is also
Which
that
is
is
what it should have been in the first place.
exactly, because AI is pretty much providing all of the facts and the insights, right? It's able to summarize, it's able to break down very complex topics and so on and so forth. So it's more um, in terms of playing. So it's not going to wipe out teachers, never. A critical
We're going to
role,
wipe out teachers who decide not to evolve.
yes, but then a critical role teachers play that AI cannot play is um, intuition, empathy, um, this other bits. Intuition, empathy, is something else I'm trying to remember. I'm sure when it pops up, I'll remember. But I mean, just let's even stay on these two, right? Intuition and empathy. There was this conversation around online learning and in-person learning, right? And there was this test that was done. And the truth is, there's always a win when it comes to in-person because human beings are wired in a way where they're able to pick up on certain things that a machine cannot pick up. So the child was probably slow in the morning because they didn't so they have a good experience at home on the way to
Yeah,
school or something.
totally missed the plot.
But the teacher is able to identify and make those.
It's interesting you say this because, and for our listeners, I hope that we can appreciate, in more advanced schools, it's easy for teachers to identify and say, you know what, your child is special, they're really advanced, we think you should move them to this school. In other schools that are not as equipped, the child is punished for being different, and nobody even sees any difference. I remember when I was in primary school, we took an intervention from my parents. My grades should come up because we realized that, wait a second, it wasn't that I was dumb, you know. And after that, it wasn't even talked about like it was a big deal. So it continued with that same mundane thing. And there was something that was consistent. I didn't do well in classes I didn't care for. And it was probably because I wasn't being challenged. But in our society, there weren't things that were discussed. It took me going to college once and having a confrontation with one of my professors, because I thought she hated me. I thought she was being racist. For her to explain that the reason she never called me in class and ignored me when I raised my hand is because where my thinking was, the rest of the class was like here. And I actually looked at her and said, "You're lying. How is that possible? You don't answer my question." Right. She said, "You don't understand. I've taught for over 10 years. Your brain and the way you analyze things is so different." And for me, that was a huge transformation for me because I then started having empathy instead of feeling like I have to prove myself. I started becoming more aware. I started finding ways to better communicate. So whereas in the past, when I communicate and people don't get it, I feel like they're being stubborn and they don't want to get it, so I get into a conflict. What I didn't realize was that the way I was thinking was so abstract and so convoluted that I had to break things down like a whole lot to communicate, right? And I was lucky that I met that professor, right? Because even my mom, who had been very sympathetic, empathetic, helping the street, never actually put it in that context, right? Because I also come from a family that is quite intellectual, so big deal, you're smart, right? And those are sort of dynamics. And the way we are smart is different. Some may be smart because they're consistent and apply themselves. Some may be smart in terms of the pick language is quick. Mine is more of the way I analyze issues, right? And we're all different and we all apply differently. But when you don't have somebody who's able to single out the different and guide you where you best go, and they put you all in one big soup, which due to economic reasons, I mean, as most of the case, because we don't have enough teachers, let alone find ones that identify the difference. So if artificial intelligence can really give this capability of allowing to gauge from different and look, and recently I think one of the also the most amazing things is when we started realizing that there's a difference from IQ, you have EQ, you have all these other things, and they're different intelligences. So just because somebody is very good at math and arithmetic or is not good at it doesn't mean the person is dumb. And then some people are nimble at other things, and that brings a whole different perspective. But as human beings, if we ourselves are not learning consistently, and the teachers are not learning consistently, they can't evolve to even grab this. So you saying that AI can help augment and support that, for me, it's a brand new world with a brand new perspective when it comes to citizens, engagement, and contribution. Where somebody that may have thought he was dumb his whole life can realize that they can also contribute to society from a very different perspective. And so the conversation is getting really interesting. And it leads me to now ask, so what is some of the work AI is doing in terms of special needs, not special needs smart, but special needs and maybe things that are different, or people with disabilities and stuff like that?
Before I touch on that, you touched on something that I want to piggyback on.
Okay.
And that lecturer who told you, your thinking was higher. It took that teacher observing over a period and possibly maybe learning and getting insights as to understanding.
And she wasn't nice about it, So for me, it's like she raised the question. I raised my hand and I'm like, I know somebody saw that. Like, how did she ignore me? But I didn't even realize that I was also being insensitive because I wasn't giving anybody else an opportunity to.
Good.
And so she was aware. But for me, I just thought, I know the answer. Let me listen to it. If they don't know, why don't you ask me? Right?
Exactly.
Totally different dynamic.
So this is just to say that the role of the teacher is ever so important, especially with these evolving and new technologies popping up all over the place. The teacher's role is always going to be important. It's just that the way they execute on it is going to be different. You understand? And I like something you touched on. The learning never stops with teachers.
Yeah.
There are other bits that they are going to have to, in a sense, be strong on, right? So the emotional intelligence bit, I liken it to a farmer, right? The farmer doesn't really just cut off the tree or a plant just because it's not going well. It investigates. Am I providing all of the necessary conducive environment for it to grow? And that approach is what I think a lot of teachers don't have. And with new technology popping up, etc., there would have to be a lot of upscaling in that space for teachers. Aside from the fact that they have to upscale in terms of understanding and how to use the tech, the bits that has to do with the human being, right? That human factor, the fact that human being is dumb. Every human being, once you exist, there's something that you have to offer to the progress of the society that you are in. It's standard, it's what it is. So now, how do we make that happen?
And even what you call offering to society is evolving. So there were times when philosophers were appreciated.
Yes.
There was a time when technologists were appreciated. Today, people will tell you the smartest man in the world is Elon Musk, but is he really the smartest, or he's just going to gadgets? You see what I'm saying? At some point, we're going to appreciate those who can look at complex human issues and create peace.
Yes.
So as the world evolves in understanding, our teachers need to also be able to have the conversations that were never had before. And for them to do that, they need to think like they never thought before.
And it has to be tied to what we want to see our human capital look like. All of that has to be aligned. And to your question, I think that's another exciting bit about AI. Is the whole conversation about not leaving anything behind when it comes to education.
Inclusion.
And so when it comes to people who are, have some sort of disability, i.e., dyslexia or some deaf, dumb, etc., there has to be a way to be educated. And I'm really excited about what some local edtech startups in the country are doing. There's this popular one called Deaf Control, right? And so this app
that's shown
assistive.
The guy representation GIZ
application. It's brilliant solution. It immediately solves that problem for deaf. So specifically with AI in education supporting people with disabilities, etc. There's the bit about speech to text, right? So in situations where maybe the child is say dyslexic, for example, there are solutions where speech and then text makes it come up in a way that the child can relate to get the understanding. There's one that a lot of people have become so used to Google Translate. People think it's like but it's a big deal, right? Something that can put me in a position where I can understand another person speaking in another language. Absolutely brilliant. The other examples as well, but I think the key point here is the fact that AI also has the opportunity to make that happen. So nobody's left behind. And so one of the big things is AI education. It's like reimagination, right? It just scatters everything and it's like, okay, what can we do to make sure that everybody's educated in the way that we want?
Sure. Interesting. Let's talk about student performance analysis. How's AI supported that?
So from just based off the fact that we have this whole conversation around adaptive platforms, AI giving us the opportunity to be able to execute on personalized learning, etc. It points to the fact that AI is gathering data, right? And this whole conversation around data being the oil, right? So if I can gather enough data enough to be able to predict, that puts me in a good position, right? And so imagine what that idea can do for education. So there's a whole lot of tracking, data gathering, and data insights that you can gather children to be able to know. Okay. So there's even this one solution that I had, I can't remember the name immediately, that is able to track and predict whether a child is likely to drop out of school or not. This based on number one, their participation in class, their engagement in class, the number of times they come to school, etc. So the gathering of all of that data will just in a
And
sense.
pre-informing the parents early so they make the right
The
changes.
schools know ding 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 ding. You need to pay attention to the child,
Yeah.
and bring it down to even topics, right?
Yeah.
So in your case, for example, right, you're in the classroom and we realize that oh, this guy, oh, he's doing pretty well. Okay, so what can we do? Should we move him? What can we do to put him in a position where he's able to deliver more? This child is not doing so great. What can we do? So that's exciting. I find that extremely exciting because it's I like how it speaks to the individual, right, and is able to give us enough information to be able to say, oh, okay, maybe this group of students need some intervention based off the data that we're gathering. And then I think before we have this conversation or this side conversation we're having where, just based off your ability to be able to untangle whatever information was that CEO or whatever was and sometimes it can lead on to family and whatnot. Same thing with kids as well. You can be able to track and say, oh, what's happening at home? There's something happening at home. This child was delivering scores 10, 10, and was doing pretty well in subject or in school generally. But this 10, you're seeing a drop. What's happening here? So the ability to identify that child and say, we are going to do A based off the insights we've gathered of you. We are going to give you more homework. We are going to give you more classwork. We are going to give you less homework. We are going to give you more of this. AI is just makes that a reality. Yeah.
It's interesting. What about exam structure? Now, I think with AI, we probably have a lot of opportunity to give exams remotely. But how do you ensure that people are not cheating? How do you ensure authenticity? Things like that.
It's so funny how you said like be able to prompt that exam remotely. Like until 10 years ago you couldn't think about it. Even 5 years ago, But then look at the way that conversation is like pretty normal. But I think in Ghana the only university I know that is pushing for has led in terms of our project exams is Ashesi University. And they at least with what I understand, they use the psychology approach, right? And so everybody buys into this idea of you're not gonna have anybody blah blah blah. Right. But now in this case we have the opportunity to be able to leverage on technology to be able to do that. So now I guess the case is okay, we have this platform that we can, deliver on via maybe webcams, etc. So in a classroom setting or whatever setting, we can instruct the AI to pay attention to certain signs, or if anybody moves their eye in a certain direction, it means that that person might be cheating. If there's a whisper or something, AI is able to catch that to a T.
But the interesting thing I also think is that the whole idea of standardized exams was to make things easy for the people that were marking. But now that you have AI, it doesn't even have to be standardized. So the questions could be randomized such that your question is different from anybody around you. So how are you going to cheat anyway? You don't know the questions I have. You don't know the questions he has.
Exactly.
So then it can be. But meanwhile, AI would have measured the level of the questions and the toughness to make sure that it's fair across board. Of course, we need to make sure that the biases are not there. And then, so you have a very unique paper. And so we're even asked for help.
Tailored specifically
exactly. Exactly.
So now you have to deliver.
Exactly.
It's exciting.
Really. Possibilities. Possibilities.
Yeah.
Let's talk about low income and rural areas and what infrastructure is needed to make AI driven learning platforms work or help bridge the education gap.
I think, and this particular question speaks to context a lot. So probably in the countries in the global north, we wouldn't necessarily have these sorts of conversations as to what AI could do in terms of solutions that offer. But when it comes to the global south, the truth of the matter is that majority of us are within the four brackets, right? So how do we deliver on education in a way that is going to be transformative?
How do we even make sure that they have access
into big conversation? Um, I think I was having this conversation with a group of EdTech founders a month or so ago, and I think one of the things that popped up was the fact that whether we like it or not, this is the context we are in, right? And so when we hear about using new technologies, etc., our task is to be able to leverage to speak specifically to our context and the pain points that we suffer. Um, one of which in this conversation is offline solutions. So there's a very popular one from Tech Week called Asaka, right? It leverages on AI, but it has this box. So it's a box, yes, and it executes. So the main selling point is that it has this offline
I
element.
think I saw something like that in a demo with Sandler's.
Yes, yes, right. And so, and just look at how that solution solves the education problem and access to education resources. And now it's leveraging on AI. It's it's exciting, and for me, just like we have examples like of M-Pesa, mobile money, etc. I think Asanka has the opportunity to be able to do that in terms of providing access, you know, providing education access to people in underserved or rural communities, etc., in a very meaningful way. And so that's what AI is able to do. The big issue, one of the
Seems
big
like we need
issues
to be having a conversation with Ministry of Communication with the digitalization project as well as Ministry of Education to make sure that as they try to be inclusive, these things are enhanced and policies around them.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's one of the reasons that we have the Ghana Edtech Alliance to, in a sense, show to governments that there are a lot of exciting innovations that are opening up in the country, right? They don't need to go elsewhere to find these solutions; they are happening right here in the country. And it cuts across, So I think I wanted to make the point about the fact that one of the main issues is the fact that some of these things are expensive to be able to leverage off their have that infrastructure to make sure that delivery info can be very expensive. So I guess it's a challenge for ethical entrepreneurs in this space to be able to figure out what are the ways we can leverage on this technology to deliver. So I think there's one solution. I think it's in Kenya. They leverage on these what we call young homes and then leverage on AI to deliver education via text. Right? Really interesting.
It's hard for people to process AI that is not affiliated with a smartphone.
Yes. You see, and I guess the way they say necessity is a mother of invention.
Of course.
That's what it is. And so for me, I have gone on this path where I want to be so intentional about popping up all of these exciting innovations in the space because I want everybody in the country across the continent and in the world to know that there's solutions that are happening here based off an understanding of context, and that's what we offer to our people in the world. Yeah.
Let's talk about creativity and critical thinking in education. With AI automated information delivery, how can we ensure the students still develop creativity, critical thinking, problem solving skills?
I guess that's a big question as well, right? Um,
And now even more so because I think most of our problems in this world is the lack of creativity or should I say very few creators. So now more than ever we need people to create. And we're creating these tools that almost seem like they're letting people create less. How do we somebody would say, well, ChatGPT is making things easy for people. Others will say no. To use the power of ChatGPT, which you create with your prompts. So how do we ensure that creativity is still happening, right? Despite the opportunities that are coming.
yes, again, like to make this contextual. I say if you're last in class, or if you're in a position where you don't have money, if you want to go to a country where you have money and live a comfortable life, you're going to be different from the person who's at the top.
Absolutely.
Right? And so for me, one of the things is with any exciting technology that pops up, there needs to be a way where latch on it and understand what it will do for us in terms of accelerating, in a way that gets us to where we want to get to very quickly, right? And so, to your question, there has to be direction, right? And so, for me, it's more so that what do you want to see? What sort of human capital do you want to see in 30, 40 years? What sort of Ghanaian do you want to see? You want to meet a Ghanaian in the street and these are the identified attributes of that Ghanaian. Go back to the classroom and say, now we have this technology. What can we do to ensure that we get our students to fit into that picture that we envision for them in say 30, 40, 50 years? AI, of course, has the opportunity to be able to do that. And so the conversation around project-based learning, we will have, I'm sure you can relate as well, we will have an approach of where you only get into group work when you get into university. It's quite a shame. It doesn't happen anywhere else. And
So from childhood, we're
Yes,
not team
you
players.
are.
We don't know how to collaborate.
Exactly.
We're individualistic.
it's very, very important. And you're reaping, you're seeing the fruits,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, it's more, okay, we want to get to a point where a lot of the Ghanaians that we want to see that year X are collaborative in nature because our problems are so many. We need people to come together with one mind to be able to solve these problems. And they should be competent, they should be skilled, and they should be patriotic. And they should have that sense of agency to want to solve our problems, right? So project-based learning will work. Because what's happening with AI is already giving us the facts, right? It's giving us the insights. It's able to put us in a position where, in terms of idea generation, it does everything for us. It's able to summarize that. So now, how do we leverage on that to ensure that students are thinking critically? So the thing is, AI is a tool. It's a tool that makes things easier. It's this thing I say most of the time. With the way AI has made everything quote unquote easy, the biggest conversation now is on execution. You have to execute. You need to see what's happening. You need to see the result of the ease that you have now. Right? So if it comes to content creation, for example, if AI is able to break down ideas for you, 10, 20 points with caption, everything for you. What next? Execution, deliver on results. So the whole conversation around problem-based learning, finding ways to ensure that students, in a sense, challenge insights that they get from AI, find challenging, students also to in a sense solve real life problems, right? And the problems are all over. So challenge them with the
I
different
don't push in
sectors
the AI and say, you know what, the answer you gave me is too easy.
Right.
Give me another answer. I want a better one.
Good.
Better.
Good.
Better.
You
and AI doesn't get angry.
Exactly.
It keeps just giving you more.
Exactly.
You just have to have the patience to ask for more.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. And there has to be a focus on execution, right? I think that's where the big task is. Put them in a position where they understand that at the rates that we are going as a country, Ghana is failing on food sovereignty. Ghana is failing on energy sovereignty. There's so many areas that we're not doing. Now challenge the people who we are educating, because education is not, it's not just what's the word I want to use? It's not like a rite of passage. There's something that you have to offer. There's some value that you have to offer first to yourself, to your family, to your community, to your country, and to the continent, and lastly to the world, right? And so it's not something that you just go through and come and say, "Well, I did psychology in school and I don't know what to do with it." No. That has to
Those
be.
things are God.
There has to be, and for me, I like to stress our context a lot because that's the only way we can feel that sense of urgency and see the opportunity that AI affords us, speeding up the process of getting to where we want to get to.
Last question. I'm sure you've been expecting it because it's a major area. What are the biggest ethical concerns surrounding AI and edtech, such as data privacy, surveillance, and potential bias in educational AI models?
Very good question. Um, I mean, definitely one of the big ones is data privacy. Right? Uh, I was having this conversation with this entity at the time that is focused on certification when it comes to tools. Um, and and so I guess with different contexts comes the areas that we prioritize, right? I'm starting from the first. So when you go to the US, for example, when it comes to effective tools, right, and the introduction and integration of AI and education, etc., we are big on privacy, right? Where my data going, right? Who's keeping it? Who's sort of what are you doing with the data? But when you come to our context, a lot of countries in the global,
It's like it's required. Take it or leave
you
it.
know,
If you don't want, just leave.
you know.
You
But
know?
then again, it has to do with prioritization. We are more focused on so with the ethics solution that you come up with, right? Is it going to solve the problem?
Yeah.
We need to see that.
Exactly.
You know, it doesn't make anyone less important.
Yeah.
But then, do you see how in different contexts
We have bigger problems than worrying about that data right now.
Exactly, you know. But then again, I mean, the conversation around privacy is a big one, right? It's something that we need to pay attention to. The fact that we don't prioritize it now, especially countries in the global south, doesn't make it less important, right? Because and so that's where the whole conversation around responsible AI is coming in. It's a big conversation now. Ensure that the conversations around AI with key ecosystem players is transparent. Let people know what they are getting into. Let there be that level of transparency to where it's at peace with using the tool because we understand the problem that we are trying to solve with the solution. So there's a privacy bit, there's the bias bit. And the
And
bias
that's
bit
where
is
CK, I think in the Tech Connect podcast season one, we're engaging with CK Bruce of Novari into cybersecurity. And I think we're talking a little bit about AI, and that was his biggest fear, that bias that's already introduced into the tool.
yeah, I mean it's real, and it can both be local and international, right? Local in the sense that it includes AI data sets that's in a sense both inserted and input about another, then that's a problem, right? If we put data sets in the much bigger ones to where it makes it look like one race is less or better than another, then that's a problem. You know, so I guess with every new technology, it comes with its own challenges. But then I think we should, especially when it comes to Ghana and the continent, we should get to that place where they're able to have our own data sets, right? Feed AI with our data sets, just so that things that we need to experience and um, connect with are not distorted in any way, shape, or form just because
it's so important because it's like a pool.
Extremely
We need to put our juice in there as well. Otherwise, the juice gets diluted.
Absolutely. 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 And so, yeah, I mean, but then again, I mean, we're still having a conversation, right? And one of the challenges I bring to this in the Ghana Edtech Alliance and I think companies, etc., is these are things you need to pay attention to because they are becoming topical issues. And you need to understand because we are becoming more and more aware of what people information now. So better to put yourself and the product in a position where those issues are present and people focus more on what your solution has to offer in terms of how to come to people delivering on education administration, that's gets us to where education is moving in the direction that we want.
So, do you have any? I mean, we've talked quite a bit extensively about AI and EdTech and some of the areas that it touches. Do you have any last words for the audience watching this?
I would say AI is exciting. The opportunities, in terms of what it could do for education is immense. And we should not be limited in our thinking as to what AI could do. Like, my thing is, let our thinking go far, wide, deep, let it move in so many directions, because once we are clear in our minds as to where we want to get in terms of how we want to see our human capital have processed in terms of uh, value addition, right, to themselves, to their family, to the community, to their country, to the continent, and to the world. Once we are clear on that, we should just open our minds, right, to the possibilities. To our teachers, AI is not going to take the job. I think the opportunity you have is to upskill, try and understand all of the tools available, try and understand what it can do in terms of making your work easier as a teacher. Lean more, lean heavily into um, putting yourself in a position where you see yourself as an agent, right? A real meaningful, impactful agent in nurturing the next generation of Ghanaian leaders who are going to transform our country and the continent. Um, and to wrap up, I would say, Papa, I enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure if you give me the chance, I could go on and on and on, because it's a really, really exciting conversation. And we've all been to school and we've seen how there were so many gaps in the education system. And so if we have a tool, a technological tool like AI that gives us the opportunity to dream and think about all of the exciting things that we want to see about human resource, that's something we should jump on.
Absolutely. This has been Texonnect Season 2, and we've been engaging with Kwame on EdTech, but not just EdTech, AI and its role in EdTech. Stay blessed, stay tuned for the next episode coming soon. Bye.